Uh, Thank you guys for tuning in. Today's conversation is going to be about stress, trauma, domestic violence. We're going to try to give everybody an overview and some tips, hopefully. And I think that right now, everybody can use a little bit of help or suggestions and open themselves up to something new. My name is Naif Mubarak, and thank you all for tuning in to Facebook Live on our channel. We have a very, very special guest today, and before I introduce her, I want to continue my tradition of sharing some good news before we get started. So yesterday was, I guess, National Arbor Day, so the city of Orlando is giving out free trees. So check out the city of Orlando's website. You can get I got a free fig tree for my dad. And also, we got really amazing news for one of our clients whose case has been pending for over 2 years. He was once in immigration detention. He was released on bond. We had to file a spouse petition. It was denied. We had to appeal. It was reopened. And then finally, the judge sent the order yesterday that it was granted. So congratulations to our clients who've been waiting so many years. I am so happy for them. So today's conversation, as I mentioned, is going to discuss stress and violence, domestic violence, and anxiety during the pandemic and COVID era. So we are so honored to have Florida therapist, family and marriage therapist, Andrla Estrella-Roa with us today. And before she gets started, I want to give some background information on her. She's been a therapist for over 13 years. And the last 6.5 years has devoted much of her practice to evaluating individuals who have suffered domestic violence, who are fleeing persecution, family separation issues for deportation. And so what she's done really is helps create an evidentiary document to provide her opinion on somebody's situation and how they've suffered under their circumstances. So that's actually how I probably met Andrea 6 or 7 years ago. And then we found out I was in elementary school with her brother. So it's a small world. It's a smaller Orlando. So further, before she even started doing that, she even worked with the agencies to represent children or to interview children on behalf of law enforcement or DCF. So she's dedicated her life to children and families. So first, thank you for your commitment to making a better world. And with all the trauma you hear about daily, I love how much positive energy and smile you always bring to everybody. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce Andrla Estrella-Roa to Mubarak Law's Facebook today.
Thank you, Naya. And it's an honor and a pleasure of mine to be working with you. And thank you so much for inviting me to talk to your clients and obviously to whoever's listening in on this today on Facebook Live. And today what we wanted to go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we're going to cover a lot of things today. So I'm going to let you kind of see what you've been seeing maybe with clients or friends and family about the different stress issues. Now, I'm obviously Palestinian, Middle Eastern. We come from, as Latinos say, machista societies where sometimes therapy and mental health issues are kind of taboo. So I believe the same thing is similar in a lot of Latino communities. So why don't you talk about how you help people break these barriers or fears of seeking assistance or some small tips that they can do?
Absolutely. And it is, and especially during these extremely unprecedented times. And I'm sure we've heard that word so much lately. But really, this is the first time that we've been forced to stay at home. And now we are also forced to somehow be teachers, parents, providers. There's so much on our shoulders on a daily basis that we weren't prepared for a month ago. And so right now, a lot of you could be feeling anxious, maybe depressed, stressed, obviously, all the time, which can lead to some behaviors that aren't normal in your history. And that is completely normal. These are not normal times. And so right now we need to give ourselves the space and the chance to, at the very least, allow yourself to be anxious, allow yourself to be stressed in obviously in controlled environments.
Right. And it's okay to feel bad, right? I mean, you're in a brand new world.
Yes. Yeah, I tell clients all the time, if you did not feel a certain way right now, you'd be a sociopath. If you think about that, right? You wouldn't, if you cannot feel and react to traumatic situations, then there's something wrong with you. And so if you're not feeling anxious, if you're not feeling some type of way right now, when you're not able to see your family, your friends, your work, your coworkers, you're stressed about money, you're stressed about homeschooling your kids, which you had never planned on doing before. You are supposed to feel a lot of turmoil right now. So how do we deal with that?
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, how do we?
Besides eating,
Yeah.
besides going to the refrigerator and just eating and cooking and it's time to eat again.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you from experience, just so you know that this is someone who's in the battlefield with you. I am a business owner. My husband works full time. I have 3 young boys, 10, 7, and 4, who all of a sudden, my husband and I are homeschooling along with our full-time jobs. And so we are in there with you. And the tips that I'm about to give you, I use myself. Because if not, I would be a mess right now. I am naturally a social butterfly. I tell people that I became a therapist because I made a career out of being nosy and liking to talk to people. And so the isolation has been a struggle for me. And so what I do is that I make sure not to go to the refrigerator every 5 minutes. I exercise every day. I walk every day. I took up gardening because my lawn needed some attention anyway. Those are things that I can do by myself, away from the kids, away from everyone else, that allows me the time to say, okay, Andrea, what are you feeling right now? I am anxious. I'm worried about my business. I'm worried about how to pay my employee. I allow myself to feel anxious. I allow myself to feel stressed. I allow myself to feel mad. I allow myself to be like, what is up? Like, what is going on in the world right now? Allow myself to do all those things.
So there's 2 points that I want to follow up that you mentioned. You said, exercising, eating, walking. Yeah. I guess that's really important about having a routine, right? Not just sitting in bed, but like actually setting a time. Hey, I'm going to work on emails from 12 to 3, and I will work from 4 to 5. So I think routines are so critical for all of us because a lot of times when you're not in your routine, you feel like you're in a funk. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And we're not,
you have to be productive the whole entire day.
Right. And you don't have to be remodeling your kitchen or doing these things or setting your expectations. So, in a lot of people, not just any, I think most cultures, you hear the term self-care, and a lot of people roll their eyes. They think, what kind of nonsense or falsafa or what is this? What is self-care that we, what are we doing here? But I think it's more than going to a spa or, having some kind of, or treating yourself to something. It's actually recognizing your feelings. Can you give us some examples of like what self-care is? Is it personal? Is it generic?
Yeah. And it's part of what I said. So it's allowing yourself to just check in on yourself. So, I just sit down and I go, okay, am I feeling some chest pain? How am I sleeping? Am I sleeping through the night? Am I waking up a lot during the night? Are you getting your exercise once again? Are you snapping at everybody? Are you more irritable? Are you feeling lethargic, which means that you don't even want to get out of bed in the morning? That's the check that you have to do first, and then say, okay, if these are the things that are going on, I need to do something. I have to do something. And most of the time what I tell my clients is you have to move. That can be the walking, that can be exercise, that could be just going outside and getting some vitamin D, but it's movement and pushing yourself out of those funks.
So we're here on probably like the rainiest and cloudy day today. So most of the time you have the ability of going outside in Florida, which is, an awesome luxury that we have. I know it was snowing in Chicago yesterday or the day before. And I think of it a lot like the gym. You don't want to go, but once you finish, you feel better. And I know that when I get to the office or if I work on a task, once you start it and you complete it, you actually feel better and somehow your stress goes away. Because I think when you're not working or being productive, you kind of develop stress and anxiety for not doing anything, and so how have you been dealing with your 3 boys? You're now a working mom who's now dealing with her 3 boys in the house. Kids kind of develop anxiety and stress similar to this, or do they behave differently?
So for children, what I tell my clients is that when you think about it, we as adults are stressed, anxious, depressed, all of these different things, and we know what's happening. We understand what's going on to a certain degree, but our children don't necessarily have a clear understanding of what's happening. But then on top of that, they don't have control. And so many times for children, when they feel out of control, when they feel like there's anxiety in the air, what they tend to do is that they will then act out. And that's when you see some behaviors that are unpleasant to us parents. And I'm talking to you once again from the experience of being, a working mother and someone who has 3 rambunctious boys downstairs. And so making sure that they have
had to move a couple times to find quiet. So I mean, that doesn't demonstrate the frustrations of working from home. Like we have to relocate, to join us live today. So I maybe where the boys are at right now. So maybe they'll have a guest appearance.
Yeah, they I'm in their playroom right now is what is going on. But anyway, so once again, just like you mentioned, Nayef, about structure and routine, that's what our children need. And so you need to make sure that if you had a bedtime routine before, stick to it. If you had a meal routine, stick to it. As much as we can stick to structure and to routine, that's what gives children security. And that also then will make it a lot easier for us as parents to navigate the day. And so thankfully, our school has like from 10 until 2:30, pretty much every day, my kids are doing the homeschool thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so at 10 o'clock, by 9 o'clock, they are brush their teeth, we have breakfast going, and at 10, they start their schoolwork. But I'll tell you that it's been frustrating because they're not in school. And so it's been difficult, and it has brought up some issues even within me where I feel more irritable. I might snap more than I usually do. And when I have those moments, what I do is, once again, take a step back. And if I have to walk away, walk away. Because a lot of times we don't realize that it's an
example of self-care, right? It's just being aware of what's happening, right? Not self-care, but just be aware, like, okay, maybe I'm hangry, maybe I'm frustrated, maybe I'm bored. Like, it's not the kid's fault. I mean, the kid crying is also struggling with this, and by keeping them on a schedule kind of limits their frustrations, I suppose, with what's going on.
Absolutely. And I would, I call him Dr. Google. Google is great for looking for resources. I typed in last night, parenting guides during COVID-19. And the best ones that I found was actually through the World Health Organization, and they have a series of flyers. So what do we do for routines for this age? How do I talk to my kids about COVID-19 in an age-appropriate manner? Because maybe some of you haven't had that conversation with them yet. And so that's something to do, is look up, reach out for those resources that our parents didn't have access to that before.
And you think child, you're thinking automatically the small ones, but like for these high school students or college graduates who this is like supposed to be what they think is their biggest moment in their life. They later find out there's going to be a lot of other ones, but they're obviously depressed. And I think maybe people need to recognize that and deal with that. How would you approach a child who is demonstrating depressed symptoms because they're not doing their high school graduation walk?
Well, acknowledge it first, validate it, which means instead of downplaying it and saying, this isn't a big deal, I don't even remember my high school graduation, on and on and on. We tend to do that, especially in minority communities, because obviously we understand that life has huge challenges. And we then forget what it was like to be 17 and 18 years old and being so excited about walking across that stage. And so we have to, at the very least, put ourselves in their shoes and say, oh, wow, okay, all right, I know, I'm sorry. Maybe we can find some solutions, which there are schools that are looking to do, like, some live feed, something like that, to try to, do that. And then also remind them, let them feel mad, let them feel sad, and then say, okay, so then what can we be thankful for now? Which means at the very least, we're healthy. At the very least, we're this, take account of all the things that are good. It's not to take away from their sadness, but it's to ground them.
Yeah,
so first,
acknowledge that you're like acknowledging that you're right. You have the right to be upset, and this is what you're dealing with. But let's focus on the exciting of college coming soon, or what that may be.
Or whatever the next step could be, you know, whatever the next step is, and say, okay, well, at the very least, you have that next step. You know, there's some people who don't have that in the world. And it's not to make them feel ungrateful, but it's to say, okay, so I know that you feel really sad right now, and you're supposed to feel sad. All right. So what's the next?
I'm sorry, finish that thought. There might be some parents out there who are unemployed, right? They've lost their job, and maybe their energy is feeding off onto the kids. They don't have time to cater to you. Like, I don't have time to hear you cry about graduation. I'm trying to find food on the table. I mean, I think this is such a distressing time for so many people. You know, hopefully they can hear some of your tips today about how to handle these. And if you're just joining us, we're just trying to discuss some tips on dealing with the stress and the trauma given the pandemic and in general, and domestic violence, you know, and we're going to talk about domestic violence shortly. I see that Amita is watching, and she's always a fan and supportive. Thanks, Amita. And so these children who are losing their graduation, and making sure that we acknowledge their, you know, whatever it might be, a depression, right? Because that the reality of it might be. Do you have any tips for what might be an alarm, or what's normal or acceptable? Like, is there a time period that a parent should look out for of the child's behavior?
Well, you know your child better than anybody does, right? And so if your child is all of a sudden displaying behaviors, maybe they're not out and about as they usually are, they're not as connected to you, they are locked up in their room, even though that's part of teenagehood. But once again, if it's something that your child was not doing before, right, this is the time to check in. This is the time to connect. You know, and so there are, you know, obviously all of us live in this world of memes, and you've seen all these memes about, you know, take advantage and connect with your kids. Well, yeah, I mean, there's that, you know, and so now is the time to set times to put away the electronics, have a curfew for the phone. Because just like adults can get addicted to the phone and can get addicted to social media, children are even more vulnerable to that. And especially at this time, because they're trying to connect. And sometimes that's the only way that obviously now that's the only way that they connect with their friends.
You know, I think if we can find a silver lining, when you go for a walk, I see so many families out, and that's nice to see people spending time with one another. Now, I want to move to work. And your latest coworker, your husband, or your spouse, or your significant other. Now you're all working outside in your offices. Everybody had space, and so now you are all living in one roof constantly, working with your spouse. What issues or tips do you have with all of this? Really, I mean, it's just there's so many different elements to it. What are you suggesting to couples? I saw a lot of memes, and my self-care is memes. I love stupid things, but they really, you know, they're funny and sometimes really on point. And you see all sorts of people mentioning that are divorce attorneys. Oh, after this coronavirus, you see divorce attorneys going like this because they're hoping that it's going to be from all the fighting. Now, I know that a lot of it is probably just fighting. People are frustrated and tired of seeing each other constantly. What tips do you have for couples who are dealing with this new stress?
Well, and it's like we talked about before. So if you walked into this epidemic and all of a sudden socially isolated with your spouse, who maybe you guys were already having issues before, this is going to be a difficult time for you all because you didn't have a good base to begin with. Right. And so now is the time that if you are able, if you're safe to do so, this is a time to communicate with your spouse. You know, thankfully, I have a very healthy relationship with my husband. And so during the first week of homeschooling, I had actually taken over and I said, look, I've got the more flexible schedule. You go ahead and, you know, you do the 8 to 5 in your office and I'll take care of the kids. And then I'll work around that. I tried that for 3 days and I got super frustrated because I couldn't get any of my work done. And so he said, hey, how are we doing? And we spoke about it. And he said, all right, well, let me do this. I'm going to switch my schedule around, and that way I can do homeschooling 2 days a week, and you do homeschooling 3 days a week, right? And that was such a great way to actually mitigate that issue in that moment. And so that's something that takes communication. And once again, if you come into this and you had a healthy base, you guys will probably be fine. It's those couples who were already having some serious issues, and now they are stressed financially. They're stressed with the kids. They're stressed just in general. There's a societal stress right now, and it's really it could be the straw that breaks the camel's back for some of these relationships.
So Mardini has asked us a question, and I keep the questions coming. I hope we address them shortly, and we will definitely save some time to answer your questions. Now, I mentioned earlier, I met Andrea at a conference for immigration law, and because of her work, now I had to deal with her. I had the pleasure of working with her for one of my clients, because unfortunately, domestic violence is too real, right? It's so prominent in so many communities. It does not discriminate, and it's across the board, economically, religions, status, doesn't matter. Domestic violence exists, and it's a problem, right? So at our office, and how does this all tie, is we represent individuals who are victims of domestic violence. So there's Violence Against Women's Act, which was passed to help those who are victims of domestic violence to self-petition. And what Andrea does is help us document some of the trauma that they've suffered in her clinical opinions. So we see domestic violence being an issue in all sorts of the communities. Now we have it where there's a big aggravating factor, right? It's the pandemic. People are not leaving their homes. People are leaving their jobs. Like, this is a pot of boiling water that's going to boil over, and just really the worst circumstances you can have for a victim living with their abusive spouse, partner, or family member. What tips do you have for anybody who's suffering violence at this time?
Well, first is that if your life is in danger, call 911. That is number one. And so if someone is hitting you right now, threatening to hurt you, hurt your children, hurt your family, in any way, shape, or form, call 911 first, right? If that is not going on, and right at this moment you are safe, I would reach out to your domestic violence shelters in your area, and NIAF has that information as well. And they don't just offer shelter; they offer crisis counseling. If you just need to talk to somebody, call them. It's free. And it's all open 24 hours in each place, and they're multilingual. And so many of them, it's English, Spanish, Creole. It just all depends on whatever they have available. But reach out, get some help, because right now you are isolated, and you're isolated to the point where not even your family can check in on you and make sure that you're okay. And so it is a scary time because abusers will take advantage of this time and use the pandemic right now to control you, your immigration status to control you, your children to control you. There are so many different ways, obviously finances right now. And so it's a scary time for them.
So she mentioned the references for the number. So right here, I've always wanted to do right here. Some phone numbers. The HaborHouse is for Orange County. As Andrea mentioned, there's more than just shelters, right? But if you feel like there's nowhere for you to go, they actually have a place for you to go. Tonight at 7 p.m., the Muslim Women's Organization is having a virtual town hall, and they are launching the House of Mercy. And it basically is going to be a transitional home for victims of domestic violence. So it's not just shelter. The plan is to help victims of domestic violence get on their feet, get independent, and not rely on it. Because what do most abusers do? Most abusers separate you from your family. And I'm not a therapist, but I've unfortunately seen too many domestic violence cases where it's the same pattern over and over again. The individual doesn't have access to a phone, right? The individual doesn't have access to money. their passport is taken, their green card is taken from them. And, a lot of times it's really heartbreaking because I'll be interviewing a client and then they say, well, I don't think I have a case, he never hit me. She never hit me. Domestic violence is not just physical. I don't think there's anything for any parent than to be threatened to never see your kids again, right? If this is happening to you and you're worried being threatened, I've had clients tell me their spouse says, who's going to believe you, an immigrant with no papers, or are they going to believe me, an American citizen? This is the kind of abuse people are facing, and it terrifies people. So if this is happening to you, you do have options. There are legal options. VAWA, this is the self-petitioning. It's not just for women. It's also for men and children who are victim of domestic violence. There are U visas. Really quick, the U visa is if you've been a victim of a certain crime and you help investigate that crime and a few other requirements, you can be eligible for protection from the U.S. government for reporting that crime. So please don't ever feel like you can't come forward. I know that the county sheriff's office, everybody's really focused on victims. And the last thing we want you to think is you don't have anywhere to go. Now, for those of you who are watching and who are fortunate that you don't suffer from domestic violence, you know somebody who is. And if you have a feeling or an instinct, check in on people. Andrea did this amazing post yesterday about creating some type of code system just to check in. And I've had clients reach me on Facebook, send me a message. He took my phone. I need help. You guys, it's serious, and they need to know that they have options and they have support. So if you think you know somebody who needs this, please let them reach out to us. We do free consultations for domestic violence if you ask us for it. If you want to learn more about it, we do have information on our website. For Violence Against Women's Act, U visas, even if you already have the green card and you're being abused and threatened, like, well, you've been married to me, now we have kids, we can remove conditions without your spouse. You do not need to stay in a situation. Always speak to an attorney about that. So Andrea has a tip for those people on how to check in with their friends. So Andrea, can you share with us how to check in on somebody that you think might be suffering from domestic violence?
So first, I would make sure not to put anywhere on a text message or a message through social media that, hey, is your abusive spouse doing something to you, or anything in reference to what you suspect is going on. I would honestly start real general. Hey, how are you? And see if they reach out. If you're able to talk to them on the phone and know that they're safe, obviously, at that time. The meme that I shared was actually something that I got from a friend of mine who's a fellow counselor. And she put on here that it's simple as if you're stuck in the quarantine with a toxic or abusive partner, message me about my natural skin products, which I don't have any, and I will know to continually check in with you. If you ask me about placing an order and include your address, I will know to contact the police. And so there's been an increase of 40% in incidents of domestic violence. And so this is the time that we as advocates, as friends and family of victims, it is also our time to make sure that we're connecting and making sure that they're safe and that they know that they can rely on us. And so if you were to just share that on your Facebook page, on your Instagram, on Twitter, wherever it is that you connect through social media. So then that way your friends who follow you can at least have access to that. I think that that's just a little step that we can make as advocates and as family and friends who just love and are worried for our loved ones out there.
So just like we are all supporting our local businesses, we need to support the vulnerable. Right?
Absolutely.
I wonder what avenues there are if, children who are suffering abuse, like, maybe friends or neighbors can recognize this. It doesn't hurt to, drop off food or just see how things are going. And I think that it's really smart to create some kind of code system for individual. That way, if they can't get a hold of a phone, that somebody can intervene and check in. And this is really important. And it's rampant in our communities for domestic violence, and now it's only going to be worse. So I mean, the only thing, if I could let you take anything away today, is please know that you have options and that there's help, and there's so much that can be done for you, and there's resources. So I'll just share these numbers again. This is HaborHouse for Orange County and Safe House Seminole. And then tonight, the Muslim Women's Organization is launching their transitional home for women of domestic violence to help them get independent and stand on their own. So I will share that link in the comments later. This way you guys can tune into that Facebook. I will also speak some more regarding VAWAs and 751. So if you watch both, you'll see me tonight. I'm sorry sometimes, but this is what's going on. So for those who just joined us, I hope you can share this with everybody. We've been trying to give tips about dealing with stress, recognizing stress, knowing it's okay, and domestic violence, that you have options.
And now that there's also free counseling services out there right now through telehealth. And so that could be video sessions, that could be over the phone. Reach out to the Mental Health Association of Central Florida. They actually have a live person on the other line who will connect you to a list of free resources in the area, who speak your language, and who can help you just through this time, maybe just some crisis counseling. It could be just a 1 or 2 time session just to help you figure things out. It's okay to talk. It's necessary to talk. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It doesn't mean that you are less than. It actually means that you're strong because you are reaching out for help when you need it.
Right. So, I mean, we did have some questions. We've been doing a live once a week. So I hope you guys find this information helpful. If you have a specific topic you want to hear about, let us know, and we'll try to cater to that. We are on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. If you want to follow us on social media, Andrea can be contacted here at this phone number. So again, if you're just joining us, today's conversation was about dealing with stress and recognizing that it's okay to feel a certain way, and it's okay to understand that this is a natural feeling. And I think we really need to embrace this. So for those who are suffering out there, there's help. You can contact any of us or your friends and know there's options. Don't feel like you're not going to see your children again. And there's legal help out there. Don't let your abuser intimidate you to the point where you have no faith and you think that you are actually in a safe place when you're not. So we did have a question from Mardini. I'll just go ahead and show it.
Oh, yes.
How about youth who are staying up late and sleeping a lot during the day? Is that normal? I think this is what she asked this question about when I asked, how do you recognize what's long-term? So I think if they're staying up late, sleeping in might be.
It's developmentally appropriate, but right now, what I would encourage parents to do is to set up the structure. So that means, if they're in high school, they need to be doing virtual school right now, right? They need to be doing the homeschooling. So every day we need to start taking our classes at 9 o'clock, at 10 o'clock, whatever that is, and then finish it on time and have it so that way we have these hours set that you are supposed to be awake and you need to be working. And take those cell phones away at a certain hour at night. I cannot emphasize that enough for these parents of teenagers right now. For us, when we were teenagers, the worst that we had was maybe the computer on dial-up. It wasn't that fast. It didn't have the access that these kids have and the access that predators have to these children through these phones. And so I would definitely tell parents there has to be a curfew for these phones for these teenagers at night, and make sure that they are still following some type of structure when it comes to
a long weekend or summer. Like there still needs to be structure in place, So I had Kareen saying super important information. We really do appreciate the feedback, guys. It makes us really happy that we did this, and I can't thank Andrea enough for doing this with me. I do tend to give her a hard time and pester around, but I think hopefully she found it worth it.
No, absolutely. I love doing this stuff.
again, so we are here for you. As far as court closures, Florida Supreme Court has still extended closures for non-emergency hearings until the end of May. USCIS, as of now, has not changed any of their dates. It's still May 4th. So we'll see if that has closed. And of course, I promise to keep you all updated. We have a COVID page on our website, and also information relating to domestic violence related issues or even asylum cases you can find there. So if you guys found this helpful, or if you think you know anybody who might need this help, please share this video or like it. And thank you for joining us. Andrea, you have anything else you want to add?
No, guys, you're not alone. We are being told to isolate, obviously, but you are not alone in this moment. Social media, with all of its hangups, does have that. So please reach out. Please reach out to NIAF. Please reach out to the Mental Health Counseling Association of Central Florida. Please reach out to the CDC. You know, there's so many resources out there to help you get through this. And remember to be kind to yourself, and to be kind to your children, and to be kind to your spouse.
So I'll just share some info again. This is HaborHouse, Orange County, Safe House, Seminole County.
And in Osceola County, there's Help Now. So that's another.
We will try to share any info that you need as possible. My email is naif@mubaraklaw.com. Email me if you need anything. Also, I'm mentioning memes. You see a lot of people saying, is it wine o'clock? Is it coffee o'clock? You know, if you feel like you're struggling with substance abuse, you know, we talk a lot about it on the internet, but some of it might become abusive behavior. So feel free that there's all sorts of resources out there. And thank you guys for tuning in, and keep safe. I love our community, Orlando and Central Florida. We're doing so good in taking care of each other. So let's remember to the most vulnerable people out there, and hopefully we can all get past this together. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you all soon. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you,
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.